Welcome to the National Women's Fitness Academy podcast. We're here to talk about women's health, female hormones, body image, and all things health and fitness.
Hello, girls, and welcome back to another episode of the Women's Fitness Academy's podcast. I'm your host, Siggy, one of the WFA's educators and a women's health and confidence coach. I want you to sit back and relax, or if you're in the car driving, tune into today's podcast because I have the wonderful Melissa Ramos, who is an autoimmune and hormonal expert. Now, if you don't know Melissa, she is on a mission for helping women struggling with autoimmune and hormonal issues to feel sexy from the inside out through nutrition, Chinese medicine, and her creativity, which I absolutely love, by making people laugh, learn, and heal. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much. That was a lovely intro.
I want to start first with the fun stuff. I was looking through your socials and I was reading your blogs, and you have a nickname that people call you the poop whisperer. And
Yeah, it was a name that I did not give myself. It was a name that I got from a TV host. And then it just kind of stuck.
yes,
Kind of stuck from there.
well, I want to know a little bit more because I think it's like a fun name to have. Like, why would anyone call you the poop whisperer? And I would love for you to share some insights around how that name came about, but also you talking about the importance of digestive health and how a poo actually plays a role in our well-being.
Yeah, well, the name came from a TV host in Canada when I was doing a live to air show, a daily show out here. And it just kind of stuck. And I think it's just because I've always spoke about digestive related stuff for a long time. I've grappled with a lot of digestive things for, when I first began my studies, back in my 20s, I was an ad exec. I was having all these digestive issues, some weight stuff, skin stuff, and came to realize that there was a lot of stuff going on with my digestive system. The interesting thing part of this entire, whole aspect is that the gut plays a massive role because if we look at, and I'll talk about Chinese medicine in a second, but if we look at like the drainage funnel, which is, how our body kind of eliminates, your pooper, the colon, is at the very bottom. So as your body is trying to expel toxins and excess hormones, etc., what you're going to end up finding is that if you're not eliminating from the bowels, it can end up getting recirculated. And that's when we start to get like hormonal issues, a lot of other symptoms like autoimmune issues, chronic fatigue, pain, etc., horrible periods, like you name it, right? It really is the big aspect of it. In fact, one of the things I've always said was, if I were to put somebody on a detox, for example, I would never, ever have them go on a detox without doing some form of bowel elimination, like whether it's a colonic or whether it is a coffee enema. And I think that this is really important because a lot of people think, well, I'm going to the bathroom, 2 times a day, I'm eliminating. But you have so many kinks and grooves of your colon that stuff can kind of just hide out that you'll be pretty amazed that when you go in for a colonic or have a coffee enema at home, you'll end up seeing like, how is all this stuff coming out of me, right? And I think it's just really important to identify that things can get stuck in the colon, even if you're eliminating often. Like Elvis Presley, John Wayne, I think that they died with like 70 pounds of fecal matter in them. Yeah, it's wild. I mean, their diet wasn't even remotely like that's a way to kick off a podcast, but their diet wasn't even remotely like healthy. But for someone whose diet is, sometimes they think that the amount of time that they're going to the bathroom indicates bowel regularity. But if you're doing like detoxification protocols, you really have to focus on some ways to clear the bowel as well, because you're clearing stuff through that whole elimination channel. And I remember the first term when I studied Chinese medicine, my professor had said, you know what the root cause of all disease is, Melissa? And I said, I don't know. She goes, it's stagnation. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And I didn't really grasp it at that point because I'm like, okay, like, she's telling me it's stagnation. But I came to realize that she's so right. If things are not moving and things get congested, and this isn't just like during a detox protocol, this is just generally in life, you're going to feel like shit, right? Like if you don't go to the bathroom, if your bile, which is a huge part of your digestive process, isn't flowing smoothly, which is a huge problem for women, you're going to feel awful. You're going to feel frustrated, angry, depressed, like you name it. So in hindsight, looking back at that conversation, I can see what she was talking about. And it's funny because it's such a huge part of my practice right now, even though I was being like a snooty little student, just being like, okay, whatever. But I get it now. I get it.
And this is where most people go wrong. And this is where I went wrong as well with my first degree of coaching, but also taking care of my health, is not realizing how important the digestive system is when it comes to like pooing. Like if you're not going to the toilet regularly, clockwork in the morning, and it's stagnant till like midday, and you're feeling like shit, you're breaking out with acne, your mood is fluctuating. It has a lot to do with the gut. And like you mentioned, the gut is such a big preface to our health. So if everything's stagnant down, it's not going down that funnel, how do we expect our lives to be a little bit healthier?
Yeah. And we also have to remember that the digestive system isn't just like your colon, right? Like it's your liver, it's your gallbladder, it's your stomach, like it's that whole process. And I work a lot with women over the age of 35. I mean, we work with women in their 20s and their early 30s too, but a huge percentage of them are over the age of 35. And we start to see that sluggish bile flow, and bile is produced from your liver. It's secreted from your gallbladder. And I know women are going to be watching this going, I've had my gallbladder removed. So when you've had your gallbladder removed, it's just replaced with the cystic duct. So the underlying cause of why that gallbladder was removed, which is that sludgy, thick bile, is still an opportunity waiting to be addressed. And that is so integral because I call bile like, if you have a dog, do you have pets?
No, but I have a family dog.
Okay, so the family dog, it wakes up, and it's like the best alarm clock because it starts, and it's about to puke, and it pukes up that yellow foamy stuff. That's bile, right? So for humans, I would think of bile as like the banana slide of that carries out toxins and excess hormones. But the problem is because it's often very thick and sludgy, it's not doing its job to flow smoothly. And because of that, it gets reabsorbed. Those toxins and excess hormones get reabsorbed versus going into your poop. Yes, you're supposed to be eliminating through your poop, but that's a really integral part of your digestive process as well.
It's so interesting. And I love that you mentioned also for the women above the age of 35, because our audience is mixed. However, we do also have the crowd between like 30 and 40 women who are reaching perimenopause, menopause. And, as we know, as we grow older, the digestive system does change, as well as like hormonal imbalances too. So by us talking about this, what other changes do you notice within that digestive system?
Well, the thick, sludgy bile is probably the biggest one that we see. I think that a lot of women, we will see them with, and this will pertain to digestive related stuff, but very low cortisol. So cortisol is the hormone released in response to stress. And so women will say, how do I boost my cortisol? Or how do I lower my cortisol? But it's like, it's an adaptive response. The body is always trying to do everything to protect you. And from a digestive perspective, these women will wake up in the morning and they have no appetite. And then you hear all this stuff like eat in the morning and eat protein first thing. And they're like, are you kidding? I'm feeling even nauseous in the morning, right? Their digestive system is like, no, I do not want food. But it's also a sign of low cortisol. And that usually stuns women. So having these small meals even throughout the day can be really, really important to kind of ease the digestive process back, because we have to also remember that stress, while it can be mental stress, it could be your boss, it could be your mother-in-law, it could be finances, what have you, but it could also be physical stress. It could be stress that's going on in the digestive system, oftentimes parasitic related, which we talk about a ton. And then that can also affect your your adrenals, right? Because your body is interpreting stress. It's not discerning like, oh, this is physical or this is mental. It's just saying this is stress. And then that absolutely can affect appetite, and nausea that can come up in the morning. So those are also big things that we see. So a lot of gallbladder issues, gallbladder removal during perimenopause for sure. We see that quite often. We see gallbladder removal that also occurs after women's have a baby. So that's really, really, really common. I always talk a lot about the liver and the gallbladder because it's the two primary organs that I think women grapple with the most. They're struggling with battling with the frustration and the anger, and then the depression, which is just anger turned inwards, right? But we have to eliminate through the bowels, right? Because when we're trying to dump stuff from our liver, if we're not eliminating, it's just not going to work.
And you mentioned a really good point around the liver and the gallbladder as well, because I know with the liver side of things, if we're not excreting or if we're not cycling through or detoxifying correctly through estrogen, as you mentioned, it just goes back into the body. So it kind of makes so much sense why so many women are struggling with the fact of excreting, the toxins or the parasites or whatever is in the gut, and it's just circling in the body.
Yeah, yeah. And it really is. And I think that, it's interesting because a lot of the women that we work with will have like thyroid issues, they'll have excess estrogen levels, which we see in perimenopause for sure, where like progesterone levels dip. And there's research to show that women who have lower levels of progesterone in relation to high estrogen levels will be more predisposed to having gut infections.
Mm.
And that's really wild because progesterone is an anti-inflammatory hormone. So from a gut perspective, it's so important. So we see this rise in gut infections with women who are in those categories of hormonal chaos, of estrogen dominance. And for reference, for women who are like, what does that mean? We're talking about conditions like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, fibroids, which are really common, fibrocystic changes to the breasts, thyroid issues like hypothyroidism also can be an estrogen dominant type issue as well. Could be, might not be. But those two issues definitely require a sufficient amount of progesterone. But when that's not present, gut infections occur, and gut infections are very much cause and effect to a lot of these hormonal issues because the gut is where virtually every hormone is produced, inhibited, and secreted. So, you look at the great ancient texts of our time of Ayurveda and Chinese medicine, it's like it all comes back down to the gut. However, what is really fascinating is that parasites, which I always love to talk about, it is not just found in your gut. And this is where I think things like stool testing, although we still see a lot of validity in stool testing is not 100% accurate to evaluate for parasites because gut infections, like parasites, they don't just, or I should say, parasites don't just hang out in the gut. We've found them in the liver or the gallbladder or in the uterus or in the urinary bladder, right? So if you've ever done a stool test, it's like pooping into what it looks like a burrito bowl and then picking out different forms of your poop. It's really not a sexy act. And then you have to put it into this little container and shake it up, and then like you shit and you ship it out. And the problem with it is if those parasites are found in other organs of the body, they won't show up. Mm-hmm. And so women are always like, I don't have these infections. And I'm like, not necessarily. In fact, a lot of parasites, crazy enough, secrete an enzyme that makes them dissolve within 24 hours. So by the time it gets to the lab, the sample, it's like, poof, they're gone. It's wild. It's like using the Harry Potter invisible cake. It's like cape. It's like it's gone. It's crazy.
That is wild. And it's so interesting that we're talking about parasites as well, because I think it was last night or the night before, I watched of course, TikTok video of someone doing some detox bath for her feet. I don't know what the ingredients were. And she said, well,
was it black?
Pardon?
Was it a black thing that she was putting her feet in?
Oh, it was kind of like darky brown. Like I'm pretty sure that it was like
fulvic acid.
Something in there anyway. And she was just recording it live, and you could see just parasites popping up, whether it's like a worm or like a white little dot. And it just got me wondering, going, how is this possible?
we can contract them through air. We can contract them through like skin contact. Obviously through saliva, you live with someone, you're sharing like a whole bacterial soup. Through pets. I mean, I'm not going to stop kissing my pets.
Mm.
There are a variety of different ways that we can contract them. If you swim, I live in the mountains. We swim in the lakes here, and it's not going to stop doing that. Even pools, like it really, everyone has it, but parasites are not synonymous with pathogens. And I think that that's important to differentiate because people really freak out about, oh my God, everyone has one. Yes, it doesn't necessarily mean it's causing a problem. So I always say to people, are you a hospitable host for infection? So are you the Ritz-Carlton for these parasites? Because if you are, they're going to be like, woo, party. But if you are someone who is taking care of themselves, you are not overly stressed out, the chances are they're probably just going to remain dormant, right? So I think it's important to assess that because, like, I think we've all been in a situation where you're cramming to go on a vacation, you're trying to get it all done, and then you go on a vacation, you relax, you get sick,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because your body feels like, okay, now it's safe. And that's when all of a sudden the issue arises, right? But it's because you were a weak host for infections. So a lot of infections, even viral infections like um, uh, Epstein-Barr virus, which, I know the medical medium talks about like a ton. Like he's like, this is the cause of all problems in the world. But the reality is that women in perimenopause are actually very prone for the activation of Epstein-Barr virus. It remains dormant. The majority of us have it. It's just dormant, sitting, lying, and waiting, right? But when you become a hospitable host for infection, which in perimenopause, which I'm going through now, it's like when you're in it, you're in it. Like, you're like, shit, I used to be really good at handling stress. How come all of a sudden this is a little bit harder now, right? And so if you're not reassessing things and really taking care of yourself, you're going to be more prone to infection for things to activate. And that includes viruses, bacterial infections, parasites, right? And are you the Ritz-Carlton? Are you the host, the hospitable host for infection?
I love that term so much because it makes so much sense. Too often I used to take certain weeks or months off work, and then all of a sudden, while I'm away, I just suddenly get sick. And I'm like, what
Yeah.
is this? Why is this happening? And then got to the root cause of it. And then I see it quite a bit with clients as well when they take time off work or during the Christmas, New Year period. Like, yeah, I'm just going to have 2, 3 weeks off. And then once they have that time off, they are sick as a dog.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And it's just, it's one of those things. It's like your body just is able to relax and to feel it all. And I think it's important to assess that it's not the germ per se,
Mm.
it's the terrain. And we've heard of that, right? So that's why I say, are you a hospitable host for infection? Or is that terrain healthy? Because we're all going to go through stress. Like if you get sick, it's not that you have an unhealthy terrain. It's that, well, guess what? You're fucking human. You're going to go through times where, we were talking just before this started recording. It's like, oh, hello, overwhelm, right? Like it happens, right? Like we all get overwhelmed and freaked out. And that puts you at a sense of vulnerability for these things to arise. And that's when hormonal chaos happens. So in practice, and what I teach, even in the academy, which is my online school, we really, the focus is yes, your hormones are vital, and there's so many things you can do symptomatically to support hormonal health. But if you are not addressing the things that cause the hormones to go out of whack in the first place, that shit's never going to be sustainable. You're going to be one of the many people who go into a health food store and you're buying all the things in the estrogen lowering section or the thyroid supportive section, and you take it for a bit, you feel a little bit better, and then you're afterwards it stops working and you're like, well, this shit didn't work. It's like, no, you just didn't know what you were doing,
Mm.
right? It's focus on what is actually leading to that chaos while supporting some of the stuff symptomatically is kind of like the sweet spot.
That is so It's such a good way of looking at it because too often people are wanting to just eliminate stress completely out of their lives, but they don't understand that stress comes and goes. And is it physical stress? Is it mental stress? Who knows? But it's a matter of like, how can you be able to handle it at the time? And as we were talking, being like solo entrepreneurs,
Mm.
you might be overwhelmed with particular project or a client or whatever it is. It's just like, how can you manage it a little bit better so you don't feel burnt out or you don't get sick?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I've come to realize that a big part is life is about adapting and it's about trying to fortify resilience. And
Mm.
when you fortify resilience, you increase, well, in somatic therapy, it's about like open it is increasing your window of tolerance or increasing that capacity to be able to handle stress so that you're able to adapt. Entrepreneurs are always a little bit of a special breed because I remember like Alexi Pano said this really well. She's like, a lot of us thrived in more chaotic environments when we were growing up. So that's what we knew of, right? And so when you're an entrepreneur, you're like, create, 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 because like you're used to that hustle and stuff. And then all of a sudden, when it's still, you're like, what am I supposed to do? This is really there. Right. And it's just so bizarre, but we're so wired for that, right? So it's like that adaptive response, I think is so important for that adaptation. And I'm still trying to get a handle of it, right? I think that's just it's a learning process. And if for the women who are watching this and who are in perimenopause, because it's a time of reverse puberty, it is a time to be able to reassess things in your life. It's like if you think that you can operate the way that you have leading up to this point and think it's going to fly in the next half of your life, you are solely mistaken, like very mistaken. It's things have to change. You have to change how you're doing things because you cannot continue to run this way and operate this way because your hormones will suffer and you're going to see changes happen.
The fact that I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, there is chaos in my work right now, not necessarily in a bad way, but when I'm creative, I get into a mood where I'm just wanting to go, 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 right, 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 do all the things. And then when it's really quiet, it's just like, oh, should I be doing more? What else should I be
Yeah.
doing? And he
Yeah.
made such a good point because it literally takes me back to previous experiences in my environment where it was just go, 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 hustle, hustle, chaos, fighting, and my nervous system doesn't know any different.
Because like these were words from Alexi, so I'm definitely not claiming them to be my own. But she was equating it with like chaos that meant safety, right? Because it's all you would ever know. It's what I knew, right? It's just my father was an entrepreneur. He was always stressed out. It's just South American households, everyone's always yelling, but it's just how people talk, you know. And that's how we're wired, and there's like that sense of urgency that kind of comes up, right? I gotta do everything right away, but I don't know where to start, and it's funny because like I joke around about it because I think I use humor as an adaptive response in life, but at the same token I
Trauma
also
response.
and so my humor is a trauma response. It's like finally I figured it out. Like, but it's if we don't figure out ways of how to adapt, that stress, that mental stress, totally reshapes our microbiome in our gut. And when it does that, everything else goes by the wayside. And so it's like, I think people try to segment things. And we see this in allopathic medicine. It's like, okay, there's a gastroenterologist, there's a cardiologist. It's like, no, the body works in tandem, right? So it all just kind of plays together.
I want us, because we've spoken a lot about the more of the natural adaptations of stress and the digestive system. And slowly in little bits, you've mentioned about Chinese medicine. I know you don't practice with people in person anymore and you still teach it. However, I would love for you to explain to our listeners how, like, what is the connection between your background in Chinese medicine and and your approach right now to health and nutrition, as well as right now you going through perimenopause, because you made such a good statement before going, the stuff that you were doing previously needs to be
Yeah.
changed right now because again, your body's changing too.
Yeah. So Chinese medicine is interesting. It comes across as so abstract when I try to teach it. So I try to like narrow it down. Like, I mean, I cried in first term because I'm like, winds, damp, cold, what the fuck are we talking about? But it is fascinating because I think that it leads to the same explanations, but it just says it, I think, sometimes often more poetically. It's a very beautiful practice. So there's a lot to be able to garner from it. And I think that especially the connections with the emotions with every single organ system is interesting. Some people will say, oh, these negative emotions are a result of stagnation. It's not true. Emotions don't stagnate. They are a result of the stagnation that occurs, right? So I think that it's really interesting to blend in the emotional component from these organs to understand even diagnostically. So for example, in the academy, one of the things we have like a whole module on diagnostics. And I have a whole section on Chinese medicine 101. And I talk about how, like, even in your day, like if there's a day where you find yourself going, we've all been there, right? Like you just sighing a lot, right? And so that can be a sign of liver qi stagnation, right? So the liver is a little bit pissy right now. So how can I love my liver a little bit more? So we have a handout that goes, okay, so if you are finding that you are, in this case, having some liver qi stagnation, here are the ways to support your liver. You can add in some digestive bitters. You can make sure that you add in some more greens into your world. You can make sure you're going to bed a little bit earlier today. Maybe you do some yoga nidra today. So that's a really cool example. Some people will have a predisposition with their voice. Like for myself, I have more of a sing-song voice. So I'll have more of a predisposition to having spleen qi deficiencies, so more digestive issues, which has been my stuff in the past. But that doesn't mean that my voice can't change over the course of the day, as anyone can. So for example, there's probably been a time where someone has asked you, hey, how are you doing? And then you're like, I'm fine. Yep, I'm good. Yep. That's a result of liver qi stagnation, because the liver's qi is supposed to be moving nice and fluidly, like a beautiful song. But if you know music, and there's staccato where it's like da, 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 right? Your voice is like, yep, totally fine. Yep, good, yep. It's like chopping wood, right? So we know the liver needs a little bit more love. So things like that, we help people to evaluate themselves from that perspective. So I give pop culture references. I think I used Miranda from Sex and the City because she has a very like liver qi, like a kind of like a wood chopping, like very stern kind of voice. So it's really fun to be able to teach some of these abstract type of things, because I think it's important to empower women, especially, and I know Australia is not that different in ways like Canada and the US. There's aspects of the medical system there that is also not exactly perfect by any stretch. And there's a lot of people falling between the cracks. And I think, unfortunately, nowadays, so many women are outsourcing their power continually to these medical systems. It's not to say that Western medicine is a bad thing by any stretch. We need it. If I didn't have Western medicine, I would have died when I had an ovarian cyst that had ruptured and tore off a piece of my right ovary, and I almost bled to death. I needed surgery. So we do need it. But for chronic health conditions, it's horrible. So, and that is the majority of what we're seeing in the population, even in Australia, even in the States, even in the UK, even in Canada. And I think because of that, it's empowering people to learn these, what I think are pretty fun diagnostic tricks, so that they feel that they have a little bit more power in their health. They have a little bit more, they can gain a little bit more predictability, because if you've ever struggled with a chronic health condition, it's like, what are we going to have today? Are we going to feel like shit, or are we going to feel awesome? You know what I mean? Like, you got this whole to-do list, you're ready to crush the day, and you wake up and all of a sudden the universe has something different planned for you. And I think that it's like, gosh, I just wish that there was some level of predictability, and you start to gain that from having a little bit more health and wellness in your life, it is possible. So from a Chinese medical perspective, understanding some of the diagnostic techniques alongside with the Western aspects of it, I think are really fun. And then your other question about perimenopause, I don't know. It's funny because I've taught about this for a while. And like I said, I think unless you were in it, you don't really fully get it. And when the first signs of it are like, your periods, maybe they're coming a little bit early. And I was always like very, regular. And now, especially as my periods start to change a bit, you start to feel like anxiety bubble up. And the reason for that, and that's pretty common. It's just, your progesterone levels are starting to go a little bit low in relation to estrogen. So as that estrogen doesn't have that progesterone anchor, the anxiety begins to bubble up. And that feels kind of shitty, but at the same token, the blessing in the anxiety is that it's forcing you to go, this isn't working for me anymore, right? Like, I can't go at this speed anymore. What do I want in my life? What actually makes me happy? Who do I want in my life, right? Like, and to be a little bit more discerning with what you let in and what you take out. So I think that there's a lot of gems in perimenopause, despite a lot of the chaos I think that women experience.
It's so interesting that we're talking about that. And again, like, I don't know if it's just the part of life that I'm in right now, but also my circle of women, mid 30s, late 30s, and we're noticing the changes. And
Oh yeah.
it's so interesting how you said, like, how do we want to start operating? Like, what changes we want to be making?
Yeah.
So often it's quite challenging to face that because we're so used to going at one speed all the time, where now it's just like, okay, we need to slow down or we need to pull back on this. Sometimes you're just like, no, I don't want to. Like, I want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And that's where the stress comes in. That's where you
You just
start.
keep getting the resistance.
Exactly. And there's so much resistance. I would love to know, like, what are some things that you've been able or you've chosen to pull away from right now during your stage of perimenopause?
The number one thing, and I even reminded myself of this today, because every single one of us is going to be faced with moments where there is just so much resistance, where I'm trying so hard, especially if you're like, a hard worker, you're a go-getter, you're alpha, um, is a thing that I am letting go of is to push through.
Mm.
That's so hard because I think that we try to convince ourselves that if I push through, I can just make this happen because I only have a finite amount of time. But the thing is that if we stop pushing through and actually focus on being more in alignment and to nourish ourselves, what we can get done in an hour can be more efficient than what us trying to push through for 3 hours, right? And we've all been there where you're trying and you're trying and you're trying, it's just not working, and like everything is going to shit. Why? Because your alignment is all fuzzy. It's not there. So it's as soon as you're feeling that resistance, as much as I don't want to get away from my desk, as much as I feel that there is a sense of urgency, um, I step away. And I think a lot of our childhood stuff starts to come up after the age of 35 to come up to really be dealt with. And, I had a very loving family, very loving parents. My father's South American, but like he has patience the size of like, a little tiny grain. And I remember being a kid, being in a toy store, and he'd be in the electronics store next door. And then when he would be done, he would go to the top of the store, wouldn't even go in the store, and he'd go, Melissa! And he'd scream so loud, and I would just like run really fast because I'd be scared shitless. So I was always raised with this, like, oh God, there's a sense of urgency. Okay, I'm gonna go. Okay, we're gonna do it. So I feel like that keeps coming up for me. And I'm like, no, there's no rush, even though I'm on a deadline. So it for sure feels like there's a rush. But how much am I going to get done? Am I going to make this so much harder for myself by trying to push through? Is going to be so detrimental, and it's going to snowball, which we've all experienced. So that is like the number one thing that I'm like, I'm dropping this. I don't need to push through. I don't need to share all my goals on social media. I can keep them all in nice and potent because it's just weird. We're in this weird digital age, right? Like, let's just talk, let's just share all of our goals. And like, these are all my goals for the new year. It's like, what if we didn't? Like, what if we just kept it all nice, potent inside? Like, who the fuck are we trying to impress? Right. And I think that you start to really ask yourself that when you're in perimenopause. It's like, who do I really need to impress right now? What actually matters to me? Because that, for me, in perimenopause, especially in 2023, was like it cracked my world right open, was all the things I thought I wanted, like legitimately was like, this is how my life is gonna go, like typical Virgo, like plans all that shit to a T. And then I'm like, fuck, I don't want any of this. And I just like literally pivoted so hard last year. And it was so devastating because I didn't anticipate that. It was like this death of what I thought that I wanted, just for the sake of like, is that what I wanted? Or is that what my ego wants? Is that my trophy to show the world? Or is that actually what I really want? And I think that that is a very big part of perimenopause, is asking yourself those really big questions. I think that that starts to happen actually like mid to late 30s. You start to kind of get those like little whisperings in your head. So listen to them.
I just want to address first the fact that I admire so much we're talking about the goals side of things, because there was one stage where I was like this big person going, this is what I'm doing and this is what I'm going to get done and da 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 da. And like, I want all eyes on me and like, look how good I am. And now I'm just like, nah, like, who am I trying to please? Who am I trying to get external validation from? And it's just like, why is my like inner little Siggy needing approval from other people? Why can't I just keep the goals to myself? And if I achieve them, fucking awesome. Give yourself a big tap on the shoulder. If I don't, what do I need to pivot? What do I need to change? And I love the fact that we're talking about this right now, because we see it everywhere. We see it,
Yeah.
everyone, I'm running, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Cool. I love that for you, girl. But like, why aren't you doing it for yourself? Why do you need to get that validation from other people? And there's two ways of looking at it. There's a way of going, cool, we want to have a sense of community, empower other women to do what we're doing and see who else is doing it, and, bringing people together. Though there's also the other factor going, are you doing this because you're wanting people to externally validate you? And that gives you like a nice stroke to your ego and be like, I'm great.
Yeah. And then we look at it and go, I remember saying this to my therapist. I was like, well, it's just, I just want to be enough. And she said to me, what's enough?
Mm.
I was like, well, I don't know. Because what is enough? We don't fucking know what's enough.
We don't.
But, it's like there's this whole thing of in Buddhism, it's like there's the three poisons, and two out of the three poisons are aversion and attachment. I want this, but I don't want this. I want this, I don't want this, right? And that's where suffering actually ends up coming, right? Is this attachment that we get to certain things. And when we start to detach from the outcome, and especially as entrepreneurs, where it's like, I have to achieve these goals. Are we achieving these goals, but for what reason? Like, is it for the validation we didn't get as kids? Is it to be seen? Is it to belong? Is it to be like, is it because you feel like you're the kid with the headgear sitting at the cool kids table trying to be seen? Or is it because is the motive to help people? Because when we switch our focus on how we're operating in life, is it to help and to be of service and for the like just the sheer joy of it. When I focus on like having fun and helping people and providing value, that's when my shit does gangbuster well. But when I start to get into like, we all need to make money because we have to pay bills. But when you get into that mindset of like, what I got goal driven, etc., it's like the frequency of that is so different. And I think that that's when everything kind of just falls apart, because that's more ego driven. I want this, but I don't want that. It's like, just focus on the frequency of like the joy and the value, and the work will end up shaping itself to something completely different. But I think that inherently we all want to be seen, we all want to be loved, we all want to belong. And I think every single person, especially entrepreneurs, are like very wired to want to be seen in some way. And I think at some point in all of our businesses, we get to a point where like why am I actually doing this? And that's when our business actually can either take off or it can go sideways. And I think those are really important questions to ask because, like, the online industry, whether you're in as an entrepreneur or you're a woman who maybe, works for a corporation, the online sphere is so beautiful in some ways, but it can be so toxic because there's such a huge comparison aspect to it. And it's always about like, look at me and look at me, look what I got and stuff. And I think that there's that like push to want to be validated in some respect. But yeah, it's such a funny world that we live in. But I think that asking yourself those hard questions are really, really, really important. Otherwise, you're going to cause yourself a lot of stress, hormonal chaos, and then your poops, of course, are going to suffer.
I love the fact how we've gone from like digestive to Chinese medicine to social media and how we've all just circled that back. But it's so true. It makes
Mm,
so much sense. Like, when you're thinking about your daily stresses, most of us are on our phones in a fucking scroll hole comparing
mm.
our lives to, Suzanne next door and how much money she's making, but I'm not making enough. So I need to show up more. So there's more stress about the overwhelm of go, 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 do, do, do. But then when you go on holidays, you're like, oh, I'm fucking sick again. So your digestive system is just like down low,
Yeah. And you
which is
also
a
look at
vicious
like,
cycle.
totally, I have problems digesting fats, Melissa. I have estrogen dominance. I have thyroid issues. Well, when you're really stressed, there's this sphincter called an OD sphincter, and it is literally helps to release bile, that yellow fluid. When you're stressed, it does this. It just clamps. So the stress of all this stuff that we're talking is really relevant to the entire conversation of the gut because when that sphincter just closes in, you are not releasing bile. Your digestive system's going to be awful. So I think that asking those big questions, like thinking about your childhood, how were you raised? What were the things that were instilled in you? You know what I mean? The nurture versus nature. All those things matter so much in terms of how we live because it isn't just what we eat. It isn't just supplements. It's like, there's a reason why in the academy I have a module 5, that goes into trauma for that very reason because I've seen women who like come in with their like supplement graveyard of all their supplements and they're taking all their stuff and they're working out and they're doing all the stuff and they're still so unhealthy. And I'm like, let's actually evaluate what's going on personally for you. Let's go into asking those big, hard questions. And I think that we're so wired for immediacy. It's like, well, just tell me what it is. Just tell me how I can change it. It's just, it doesn't work that way. You ask the questions and then, the universe starts to slowly unravel it. And it was Melanie Ann Laird who'd said, leaders build bridges and bridges will be tested. So you can have this goal, whatever it is that you want, but you're going to be tested
Mm.
because as soon as you're tested and that if you're tested and you crumble at that test, the bridge is going to fall apart. You can't bring a bunch of people with you, right? So at the end of the day, the test is still going to come up in various aspects of your life until somehow it's integrated and you don't feel anymore. Like I had that whole thing with my thyroid. I had a thyroid nodule that was supposed to be biopsied for cancer. I was legitimately doing everything under the sun. I was like the most cleanest, healthiest individual possible until I started to actually incorporate breath work as part of my practice. There's an excellent book I think people should check out. It's called The Presence Process. And the author's name is Michael Brown. If you want to do deep work where stuff will come up, like everyone talks about breath work, and he doesn't even call it breath work. He calls it conscious connected breathing. But it is by far, it's a 10-week process. It's 15 minutes of breath work in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening for 10 weeks. And he gives you like weekly prompts. It was so transformative. When I went to go get an ultrasound done, my nodules on one side were completely gone. The large one had shrunk down by about half. And the doctor was like, "What did you do?"
Mm.
And it's like I would have like snotty, ugly crying moments when I was doing breath work, and I had no idea why. And it doesn't even matter. It's just the release of it was so important. But it took me 40, like I'm 45 now, but it took me 40 years to figure out how to feel. It's not like I feel sad, I feel happy. It's like, no, 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 no. What's the resonance? Like, where do you feel it in your body? You feel it in your thyroid? Do you feel it in your gut? Do you feel it in your heart? It's and then having that mindfulness practice to feel through it, which by far, even to this day, is the hardest thing I think for a human being to do because we'll be like, okay, I'm just going to go and scroll hole. This is so much easier. I'm going to go grab myself a glass of wine. I'm going to go call my girlfriend. It's just be mindful and be the watcher, which is what Buddhism is about, is like the mindfulness practice of watching it. You don't have to stop everything you're doing, but like, okay, in the back of my head, I know I feel it in my thyroid or in my throat. And I'm just going to feel through it as uncomfortable as it is. And eventually it'll go away. Otherwise, it's going to keep coming up in various instances and you're going to relate it to that person or that experience. It's nothing. It has to do with something possibly that was wired in the first 7 years when your nervous system was wiring together. And the nervous system plays a role in all of your whole body, your digestive process, everything. My parents were phenomenal people. They're still married. They're lovely human beings, but they weren't perfect like any human beings. I had dynamics with my sister that was like oftentimes oil and vinegar, but and it shapes us who we are as individuals, and it does have a massive impact on our health. When we look at holistic, what is holistic healing? So it's not just about the gut, it has to be about all the other emotional components that we were talking about today in this podcast.
100%. And this is why, like, my big ethos around my coaching is wellness, because wellness isn't just gut health. It's mindset, it's body, it's spiritual, it's financial, it's social. It's like whatever comes up, like it all interconnects everything. And too often, hands up here, I used to be the biggest avoidant
Oh yeah.
to doing anything hard conversations whatsoever. And then I just remember the first time I had a therapy session, I just broke down. Absolute like a baby wanting her mother so much. And it just like it opened my eyes to how
Yeah.
much pain I was holding on and how much avoidance in my life I was experiencing, why I was having hormonal issues when I was just 20 years old, why I wasn't shitting like in 2 weeks' time. I had to get set like douchebags and all these stuff. It was just like crazy, like beyond my understanding. Now I love self-exploration studies and books and courses, and like people
Yeah.
come up to me and they're like, you just love asking questions, Sig. And I'm like, I am the question person. Like if we're having conversation right now, like if you and I were having coffee right now, I would want to know everything and everything about you, and not in a really like weird fucking way, but just like in a way to know you as a human, like what makes you tick, what do you love, what do you don't love, all of that. And I think you mentioned such a good point where people are avoiding this pain, but
Oh,
again,
yeah.
seeking that pleasure from the scrolling, from the liking, from whatever the dancing TikTok videos. It's just like, how can we change this narrative?
And it's so hard. Like I'm always open to the deep conversations. Like I can't do small talk. I just can't. It's
Oh, I
not a
fucking
part of
hate
it.
it.
Like I'm just like I literally am so socially inept. I'll put two words together and do not make sense. Extremely socially fucking awkward. Like I rely on my husband so desperately with these because he's so good at like small talk. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But it's so important that we dive into that because those questions and those self-explorations really what shapes us as human beings, right? Like I think it's so pivotal for us. And that's why like those practices, whether it's breath work or the mindfulness, like I remember having an entire day where I was trying so hard to feel through something. And it felt like I would took a big supplement and it stuck in my throat. That's how the emotion felt. Like it would not come out. It just was like this rattling little thing in my throat, but that emotion didn't want to come out. And in Chinese medicine, we call it plum pit chi, where like you just feel like you got that rattling or not that like that's thing stuck in your throat. And it took all day. My husband comes home from work And I'm running myself a bath, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm sitting on the edge of the bathtub, and I just broke.
Mm.
And I couldn't even put words together. I'm like, and he's like, "Okay, breathe." And it felt so good to finally release it. So I think when I talk about mindfulness practices and for people to feel through things, it can take maybe an hour, but sometimes it could take the entire day. So it's the body is going to work at it on its own time. But I think the avoidance is so common because the last thing we want to do is we don't want to feel how uncomfortable it is. We just want to avoid it at every cost, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why many more people need to have these uncomfortable and hard conversations. Because again, if you're not going to have these conversations, if you're not going to open up, if you're going to constantly just put a wall in front of every little hard thing that comes up in life, like you're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to be able to deal with real hard shit in life.
Yeah. Yeah. And the people I find that, you know, I think friendships are interesting because there's people who you can go really deep with. And then I've got friends who I probably can't go very deep with, but I think our expectations that we place sometimes on friendships. I used to always do this. I'm like, well, I have this expectation of to find these like perfect friends. And it's just, I think that there's different friends for different reasons that you have.
Yeah.
And to be like, how hard am I hanging on to certain people so I feel a certain way? Right? Like I also think it's really important to be able to instill a sense of trust in ourselves, which I didn't realize for years I didn't trust myself to feel because I thought, well, if I feel like absolute crap and I feel super shaky or super anxious, I'm going to reach out to, my girlfriend, or I'm going to reach out to my husband. But sometimes at one point, I actually, and I started to do this last year, I stopped myself. I knew that I had the support, but I stopped myself from reaching out just as a practice to show myself that I can trust myself to get through this.
Mm.
I can trust myself to self-regulate. And even though it feels so scary and that I'm not going to get to the other end of this, and the shit that we tell ourselves is like, oh my God, I don't know if I'm ever going to have this or I'm ever going to reach this. And like, but I'm feeling this is going to happen. And I know it because it's my intuition, but is it my intuition or is it my fear? And to distinguish those two is actually really important, right? Because that can really mess with your head. And to go, okay, I can trust myself to feel through this. And I know that I can get through this, no problem. But I think that that is such a huge aspect of wellness and healing because, people always talk about like affects, your organs. It's horrible for your body. But I don't think that they talk to the degree of these conversations that we're having because it's these conversations, it's in that dirt, it's in that darkness of like some of the people who you think are like the happiest, funny people online could have just had a breakdown like, 5 minutes ago, right? Like everyone's going through shit, no matter how successful that they might look on the outside. And I think that that's the part of the world we often don't see because we get that highlight reel on social media. So that can also be the other toxic aspect of it.
Mm. So bloody toxic. I feel as if this could be like a conversation for another time. Like the deeper we go, I'm just realizing, obviously, like for our listeners to understand that it's just beyond the nutrition side of things. It's a whole
Oh, yeah.
life aspect of looking at it. And as you mentioned with that book of the presence process. And also there's another book that I absolutely love is The Body Keeps the Score.
Let's
Um,
keep score from Bessel, Van something or another.
I can never pronounce Bessel van den something. And
Yeah, I have that. It's funny. I have both books literally here. This one
yes,
you're talking about, and that's the presence process. Yeah, Bessel van der Kolk,
there you
medical doctor. But yeah, it's so important to see all those aspects of the body. And like one of the things that we even talk about in the academy is like our different elimination organs and how even with like trauma, how it gets stored in various aspects of our bodies, like in the fascia, how tight our fascia can get with trauma, how tight our muscles can get with this buildup of calcium ions that occurs where your muscles just kind of get really, really tight. Even years after the trauma has passed, there's still this flood of calcium ions. So all of a sudden you're like, why have I been wearing my shoulders as earrings for like 40 years? Well, shit, this is probably one of the reasons why, right? So it's like seeing this as an overall aspect to healing, I think is so important. It's, the amount of women I hear that will be like, I've done a parasite cleanse. This hasn't worked. I've done this, it hasn't worked. And I'm like, okay, so there's a bigger thing that we're not talking about here. And that's really like, I'm doing a masterclass on the 23rd of January, how to become your own healer. And I go through this and all the elimination organs in depth, including like also diagnostic skills of like how to read your eyes, because I'm a trained iridologist, which the iris is, the colored portion of your eye, and really seeing the body as a whole and empowering ourselves that like, yeah, this sounds really intimidating of like, shit, I can become my own healer. You can actually, you really, really can. We're not going to throw you to the wolves and go, okay, figure it out. I mean, this is a whole holistic realm, but the masterclass goes through this like in depth. So I'm excited to be able to share that, because everything we've been talking about is like that and so much more.
Well, for those who are listening in and for those who are watching, make sure that you head over to Melissa's page to register to the webinar. I'll put it in the showcase notes as well for everyone to get onto this. I know today has been super valuable and so much fun to talk about this stuff without having to be so dead serious about it, because I feel sometimes when we're talking about health diagnosis or women's hormones, some women feel the shame and blame around this, or the guilt around not being able to be where they are. So I hope this conversation has made them feel a little bit at ease, going, hey, you're just a fucking human, just trying to navigate life the best as you can.
Especially if you're a practitioner, because I think practitioners especially suffer with so much shame because in some weird self-conscious way, it's like, I have to be operating at this level of perfection with my health. Otherwise, I suck. It's like, no, you're human and you're allowed to experience joy. And maybe you do have a glass of wine. Maybe you have a cookie. You're not a bad person if you do, right? It's like you are more toxic if you end up having this really shitty mindset and this really shitty way of like operating emotionally than if you actually had the cookie. So, balance. I think life is meant for living and for enjoying. So, yeah.
Yes. Amen to that. Well, girls, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please make sure that you let us know, drop a review and tag us if you screenshot it. Till next time, let's take care of our healths and register to Melissa's webinar.